One of the best ways to support Melissa and the Mighty MERP Podcast is to go to our YouTube page, find the subscribe button, and once you've hit subscribe, open the menu and click the bell icon so you actually get alerts when we post new episodes or shorts.
This podcast is not a source of legal advice. No two legal cases are the same. Contact an attorney if you require legal assistance.
Kristin, welcome back to the Mighty MERP Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited. It's 2025 and we got back together to complete this conversation.
I know, I felt bad that I was, at the end, the life of a lawyer really jumped in there where I, had to say, oh my goodness, the court is calling me right this second. So I do apologize for the abrupt ending, but I know you understand.
Totally understand. And I think it gives your listeners and viewers a real good insight as to really what our lives are like. At the drop of a hat, a judge could want to speak with you, and it doesn't matter what we're doing. We take that call.
Yes, I will say that there is a high energy and a high demand on us, which I think we were talking about last time. I think especially even having the conversation of switching to all Zoom hearings and meetings, but not getting that mental break because it was back to back to back. I will say that my kids who have worked at my office now for the summer, I had my oldest worked as my legal assistant for about a year. They got to see that level of intensity that is always there, that they now understand. And in some ways, it's really nice that I get home and can say now, because they've seen it, you just can't talk for a little bit. I just, and when they were younger, you couldn't really say that because they wouldn't have really understood it. But now that they've seen it, they can relate. So me being the nerdy nerd I am, I re-listened to the whole podcast, and then I printed out the podcast because so I have the whole podcast. So I'm just going to say, I really loved the idea that, I don't really love the idea that you had to learn this, but the saying, we don't have to earn rest. We don't have to do enough work to earn it or deserve it. And I think that resonated with me. I'm sure it resonated with a lot of listeners. We were talking about the wall that you hit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where we really were having the conversation of how you were handling it, and sort of, you did talk about the not eating and the other health issues. And you said the doctor pretty much put you on a 30-day leave, which you had to negotiate for your trial.
Yes.
Were you struggling with actual, not's the right word. Were you struggling with medical issues, or was everything connected to the stress, which were true medical issues, like probably dehydration, exhaustion? I'm sure your blood work was a mess if you weren't eating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you could share a little, I know we talked about the wall as a very general term. If we can talk about the details of how it affected you and what was the doctor's concerns that was so mandated for you to stop working.
Right. Yeah, I think that, just the overwhelming sense of dread that preceded each day, was cause enough for concern. And it's interesting because, it's what came first, the chicken or the egg, the health issues that then, contribute to me being worn down, or the burnout and it manifesting itself in so many various ways. It's almost like all these little flags were popping up to say, pay attention to me. Here, your nose is bleeding constantly. Or, family law symposium, I had to walk out and go to urgent care. Okay. That was in 2023. Yeah, okay. It just wouldn't stop bleeding. So that obviously was like some
so
kind
you were
of,
having physical manifestations as a
I
result
was
of
having hives and rashes, and it would be all over my neck or, on my arms. And the sleep deprivation thing was really probably one of the worst things, was just not being able to sleep through the night, because when you're so tired, that's the thing that you want for most. And just that concept of like waking up every 2 hours and also having like a sense of panic about like looming deadlines or client cases, that never is a good impact. I mean, I've read several things about when someone is sleep deprived, it's as dangerous, if not more, than somebody driving drunk. Like you are not you're not of your own mind at that point.
Well, that's why we have statutes in New Jersey now about sleep deprivation that are criminalized the same way as DUIs are.
Mm-hmm. And that can apply to like, moms who haven't slept or dads who haven't slept or, any of those things. And so it was kind of like I was noticing certain things, but then the blood test revealed other things. And this is such a weird thing, but I also had not been taking very good care of myself, like getting regular checkups, getting regular blood work, going for, regular OBGYN. And what came up was like massive cysts. Mm-hmm. And like 6 months later, those were gone. And maybe it's the change of diet. Maybe it's the reduction of stress. I have a tendency to think that those things are connected. And those are ways that your body is rebelling against you and saying, please stop. Please.
Right.
And so, the hives are no longer like taking over my whole body. I don't have the sleep deprivation anymore. My appetite is generally good, especially when I'm in New Jersey. Right. And I have cheesesteaks around or chicken parm. And in general, my happiness has improved. My quality of life has improved. And it's not just like medication or therapy, but like the overall just changing those bad habits that were really like dragging me down. And by bad habits, I mean like overworking, not sleeping, not eating, not stopping for lunch, not having boundaries, working into the late hours of the night, working into the early morning hours, working on weekends, working on holidays, having my phone attached to me. So it was a lot of like behavior modification on my end.
So that's what I was going to ask, honestly, is that, so based on what you're saying, I'm assuming that a lot of the medical issues were able to be dealt with, but you needed in the sense of medical care, but you also needed to address the mental health issues, the boundary issues, and, which worked hand in hand with the medical issues. So I always have like multiple questions, but my first one is, how long did you really focus on you? Because I know you said the doctor wouldn't give you a time.
Right.
And the initial time was 30 days. Mm-hmm. And I think anyone who is dealing with all these issues, I'm going to say 30 days is probably not enough time. And so how long in the end did you really need? And then my next question is always for someone who kind of made their way out of it. And I know you're happier now. You're just as successful, if not more. What were the steps that you took? And I probably will want to go into depth about each of those steps. But it's hard making that huge change. And also, you said you weren't sleeping and you were constantly thinking. I call that like not being able to shut off your brain. You know, like how do you learn to say to your brain, stop the brain from working, you know? Mm-hmm.
Especially when I had so many bad habits that had gone on for so long that it requires like there's little shifts and then there's massive shifts. So to go to your first question about like how long it took, typical recovery time for burnout can be a year and a half, sometimes even as long as 2 years. I knew that I wasn't in a position to wait to return to work until I was like cured of burnout or fixed. But there's a level that you reach that you've made significant progress in, your own mental and emotional health and your physical health, that you say, I'm going to go back to work, but this time it's under specific terms. It's not going to be the 60-hour week. And during that time, you focus on the lessons that you've learned and the little shifts that you need to make. Instead of just talking about them with your coach or your therapist, you're now implementing them.
Mm-hmm.
So it almost feels like your homework assignment is to return to work and to establish boundaries. And thank goodness I did have a coach for this, because I initially tried to DIY my burnout recovery.
I think I'm going to read all the books. I'm going to teach it to myself. I'm a really smart person. And
exactly. Yeah. I was like, I can do this. I'm smart. I'm trainable. And then you just realize that like you're in too deep. And the same way that we tell our clients, like, you need me to handle this because this is what I do. And, I am fully versed in this. I am, kind of an expert. Then that's what I wanted out of my coach. I wanted somebody who really knew what they were doing, but also in the back of my head, I was like, because then I can speed it up.
Right? I know, which is wrong. But I will say that, and I've talked about this. I was seeing a therapist when my mom was alive. She had dementia and I was taking care of her, and then seeing the therapist after my mom passed away. And my therapist was a former lawyer.
Oh.
She was a lawyer first and then went and back to school. And for me, that was really important. And I didn't even know it was important. But, sometimes explaining my day and my life and the pressures is really, it's easy for someone who wasn't a lawyer to be able to say, well, just stop that or say no to that,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I get that, finding the right person. And I also think sometimes even if you know the information, it's hard to put it together for yourself.
Oh, yeah. And we have this, and I say we, for me, I had this fear that the way I wanted my practice of law to look like didn't look like anything I had seen before. And you have the naysayers who are like, oh, that's never been done that way, so it can't be done that way. And, going back to, I think, our prior conversation where like all we see are these people who are like working constantly and then brag about like how accessible they are or like how much of their personal life they give up in order to serve their clients. And it can be that you serve your clients and also have work-life balance. And, but instead everybody focuses on like, let's all commiserate about how miserable our lives are and how we lack balance. So I worked specifically with my coach to decide, and this is like so imperative, what do I want that to look like?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not something that's available as far as like working at a firm or something, then maybe I just go solo, or maybe I partner up with somebody where we are of like mind, where we say, let's design what our lives look like and then build our practice within those lives instead of vice versa. So I worked with my coach, and it would be every 2 weeks I'd meet with her. Every week I was meeting with my therapist. So it was great. Like I had the support of everyone, and we understood there could be like some stumbles and, some challenges going from, basically re-entering the work field again, taking on cases again, meeting with clients again. And what I noticed is like, so it was about 3 months that I was on, it was about 4 months that I did not practice.
Okay. And just so we're clear, did you leave the law firm at that point? Were you on your own? Because I know you were with a law firm. You billed and brought in a lot of money. You said you were hitting a wall. Did you leave the law firm already?
So after 90 days, my doctor renewed once, twice, and after the 90 days, he's like, I don't think that another 30 days is going to change your situation. And that was a really tough thing. But I was like, but I really need another 90 days. And he was like, oh, you can take another 90 days, but it's not going to be medical leave. Essentially what he was saying is, you know what you need to do. And I did feel like my progress was going to be jeopardized by returning to the same environment because they knew the old me. And I believe that the expectation would have been that, like, I'm back. We're just going to continue on. Everything's
We're going to
good
go
now.
right back into the trenches and do everything that I did that made me come to this wall to begin with. Yeah. Also, law firms that are brick and mortar, or even if they do some work from home, but if they're established a certain way, people do not like change, which is really when you describe the type of business that you have and people sort of go, that won't work.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is that there are just people that are no people in life. So whatever you say, they're going to say, nope, that won't work. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
But part of it, their position is, I haven't seen it done, so it can't work.
Exactly. Or if we do that for you, then like other people might ask for those same things.
And so,
and that's one thing I love about like my coach was that she was seeking to kind of eradicate burnout culture as a whole. And we can, until CEOs and CFOs and presidents of companies are receiving burnout training, burnout prevention strategies, burnout recovery strategies, it's probably not going to happen on like the greater scale. Okay. It's going to start on a smaller scale and perhaps spread a little at a time until the attention of a, big CFO, CEO notices and they say, wow, we're going to get the same result with all these people if we keep doing what we're doing.
Right. Well, I think it becomes a cost analysis as well, right? When it starts affecting the bottom line and, or productivity or something more,
And I was unfortunately for those first 90 because I want to say like that was like the most intensive part where I got, of course, try to overachieve, not only like where I was doing like daily yoga, doing like every week therapy, doing journaling, meeting with my coach, working on my homework with my coach, and just trying to get my brain back in line again, get my, my emotions in check and my brain in check, and also like deal with questions within myself, which, a therapist and a coach can't answer for you, which is, do I want to be a lawyer anymore?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I like about it? What is it that I don't like about it? What is it that I have the power to change? What is it that I don't have the power to change?
Mm-hmm.
And given the things that I can change and can't, do I still want to be in it? And do I want to be a family lawyer? And if I don't want to be a family lawyer, is there any other lawyer I want to be? And if I don't want to be a lawyer, what else will I be?
Right. So you have like 10 questions. That's a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to go back to your clients were being taken care of at minimum from the law firm.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So after the 90-day, I was supposed to go back to work, and literally the night before, I kind of had
it. You felt it.
I felt panic, and I cried, and I felt like all of my hard work and the progress that I made, and I felt so happy and so proud of my progress, knowing that I was not even close to the end of the recovery, not even still in the beginning stages of the recovery process, but I felt threatened, and nothing was said or done in particular, like to me, but there was so much doubt for me surrounding what my return would look like, that doubt and that lack of communication just created more anxiety and fear.
And your body probably was telling you, like, sometimes I think your body knows before that.
I think about like the brides that like get nervous like the night before the wedding and then they decide they're going to back out. And I felt like I was one of those where I was like, I can't continue on like this.
So, so what happened the next day? Did you make the call?
The next
Did you?
day, I sent my resignation letter and dropped my laptop, my keys, and my company issued Amex off at the office. And I was just, I can't do this.
But how did you feel after you
Scared.
dropped everything off?
Scared but proud. Like it was definitely like a double-edged sword, other side of the flip of the coin, where I was scared because I had no plan. And so like the immediate response when you submit a resignation is, well, where are you going? I had no answer. I had nothing lined up.
You still had the 8 other questions that you needed to answer, whether you wanted to work as a lawyer, what type of law you wanted, where did you want to practice, how you were going to practice. You had a lot of questions that were still outstanding.
Right. And it's interesting because I think that next moment that followed, I began to really work on, now that I have closed this door, working with my coach, I'm like, what does the future look like for me? What am I going to do to generate income? What am I going to do? What career am I going to pursue? And how do I go from where I am right now, unemployed, to employed, but in a way that serves me and in a way that is not going to jeopardize the progress I've made and is not going to thrust me right back into 40 to 60 hours a week, which most things that are listed are. So, when I just knew, I'm like, if they want a workhorse who's going to do 6, I'm not it.
Right.
I got really creative, and I started, initially like applying for, temporary jobs or part-time jobs. And then also, kind of writing a list of all the reasons why I didn't want to start a law firm again. Because of course, everybody was like, you already did it before. Yeah, I did it before. I know how hard it is.
Right.
And I did it before, like without a burnout brain, and it was hard. Now I have to do it like my recovering burned out brain.
So did you decide that you still wanted to be an attorney? Did you have an epiphany that was there something that was the catalyst to get you to that point of, I want to be an attorney and I still want to be a family attorney? I mean, those are 2 big questions. So, were they the ones that you answered for? I assume you had to answer, I want to be a lawyer.
Right.
First,
She's a Walmart reader, which was on a list of possibilities.
Again, you said you could always go back to teaching. You
Exactly.
could, I taught at Rowan University for a number of years as I was, I always like to say when I tapped the brakes of my legal careers, because I had 4 kids under the age of 4, which is a lot of kids. I know there's twins in there. I cheated. I was only pregnant 3 times.
That's all right. You got your bang for the buck.
Yes.
So I guess I started working on like the answer to those questions, what I wanted to be when I grew up, was what I already was that what I wanted to stay? And I have to tell you that some of the I received encouragement where I wasn't expecting it. And there are certain people in your life who you hold in high regard, and their opinions mean a lot to you. It was during my burnout that I really, really missed my Judge Baker, who passed away, because I was like, Max would have known what to say. Max would have known like what to tell me, and I could have turned to him. So instead, I started thinking like, well, what would Max say?
What would Max say?
What would Max say? And then I just so happened to run into a few judges that I had been in front of who had noticed that I had been absent for a little while, nothing before them. And I kind of filled them in. And I was kind of taken aback that they were like, we need you. Like, wait, we need you. You're needed. There's a population of people who will be better served with you by their side. And don't let this get you down. And it may be that you cared so much, and that's kind of what brought you down this lane. And that's what makes you good. And so, like, first of all, I don't know how
hearing
it is
from a judge that you're good,
but compliments are very few and far between when you're dealing with divorce.
Right.
You
Well, I
know,
always
and
say
it's
that
not-
the compliments from the court usually I find are in their the language to ensure that whatever occurred stays and is not appealable, which sounds awful to say, but you know, when you hear regularly, the first time you hear it, you're like really proud. You know, the plaintiff or defendant is represented by competent counsel, blah, 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 blah. But then you realize that it's just part of the language that they're using prior to rendering their decision. It's different. You're saying they went out of their way to say to you, you are really good at what you do.
And I was, you know, I always want to think like I know I'm doing what I'm doing and I'm doing a great job, but like to hear it from the people that have like hundreds of attorneys appear in front of them, it felt really good. But it was like a sincere thing, which is like, you realize like there's not new attorneys coming up. Like this is a really tough field and we get where you were coming from. And we're not honestly all that surprised that you got worn down because you work really, really hard and, you know, you're really intense with, you know, how you advocate for clients, and you care about what you do. But to hear them say that was like, wow, holy moly. And
it's great that they did. I think that, you know, they have so much, like you said, they see so many people are in front of them, and just those kind words of saying, like, we need you in the court. Your advocacy is missed. We feel the difference. It's huge.
It meant so much. Like, I don't know if they even appreciate like the gravity of their words. And then the second thing that kind of happened that was, I feel like the universe will like send you these like signs.
Agree. And I say it that too. I say the universe is sending me a message.
I started to get like Facebook and Instagram messages from my former clients
saying, when are you coming
finally
back?
Were notified that I was not coming back to the firm. And so they found creative ways to find me, whether it was like LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. And suddenly I was getting messages saying, where have you gone? Are you okay? And please come back. I need you. I guess inherently in all of us as human beings, it feels good to be needed and wanted. And when you're in the depths of burnout, you feel in your gut that nothing you do matters. And it's a real feeling of like stagnancy or like lack of, oh gosh, I wish I could remember it. The lack of efficacy. You really start to feel, and this is not just me and it's not just lawyers, like whether it's a doctor, whether it's a caregiver, you start to feel like, you know, what you do doesn't matter, or that you're not making a difference, or that, you know, you're a cog in a machine, easily replaceable.
Right. I'm replaceable, not being there, you know.
Like,
and
why am I doing all this, working so hard, blah, 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 all that stuff, when does it even really matter? And so, like, having been in the pit of to hearing from people like, I hope you know, you were like my favorite, and I really miss you, and things have gone all down the drain since you've been gone, and you wouldn't understand, and I have an upcoming thing, and when you get somewhere, will you please tell me where you are? And I was like, okay, I will.
Right. And the universe, when you say the universe is sending you messages, it's all about the timing as well, because if those judges interacted with you or those clients maybe within that first 30 days, it might not have changed where you were mentally, but it was after the 90 days, it was you making the list and trying to really figure out what your roadmap and future was.
Right.
And at the same time, you hearing it, it was at a point in your, I'm going to say recovery, or that you were able to hear and listen and receive what you Because if you're not able, if people are saying all of that, but you're not in the right place to receive it, so that's why I say the timing is always so important as well. So
we hear all the time from people, oh, I'm working with a therapist. And in my head, I'll be like, I can't tell. Because they're not in a position where they're receiving. They're just simply spewing information at that point. You have to get to the point where you're able to receive and discuss like how to implement change. The past is the past. We can regurgitate it and put it out there and tell our therapist or our coach or our lawyer where we're coming from and that history that brings us to where we are sitting in front of them that day. But until, you're open to receiving, there's no change behavior up ahead.
Right. So you learned at that time that you want to be a lawyer. You still wanted to do family. Mm-hmm. And then you had to have made the decision after you did all your pros and cons that you were going to open up your own firm again. Oh, no, you didn't. Oh,
you didn't.
You didn't. No.
That was one of my decisions, was not to. And I
always think that you're now solo, but you're not. I apologize for saying that.
I have what I love about where I am, and this is why this is a good fit, and this is why again, the universe popped it into my life and I attracted is that I have so much autonomy that sometimes it feels like I'm a solo, but I'm not a solo because I have an amazing team, and amazing supports and, other attorneys on the team. My boss, John, is fantastic. Like, talk about supportive and encouraging. I mean, it feels like almost like a dream. I don't know. My paralegal is fantastic. The intake team's fantastic. I get all the benefits of being solo, which are, me working from wherever without anybody criticizing or anybody judging me, and get to represent my clients. I get to pick and choose my cases. I get to choose what case types, what counties, all of the same things that I'd be in charge of if it was my own firm. But instead, I have somebody who manages payroll and makes the HR decisions and maintains the insurance and, does trainings and retreats and all the parts I didn't want to be in charge of. Someone else is gladly taking charge of those things. And yet I feel like a valuable member of a team. Feels nice.
Right. So you said the universe dropped this in your lap. So tell us the
of course, I'm like,
how this door opened, because it didn't just drop. You were looking for the right fit.
I was looking for the right fit.
And you were at a point, and again, you were at a point where you knew what was going to be acceptable, and you knew what was not going to work.
Right.
So I'm sure that is part of the realization of what you needed in order to stay within the field of working as a family law attorney.
Yeah, I actually had like a couple headhunters reach out to me, and they were like actively working on things. And then they would give me like a little synopsis of what it would entail. And I'd say something like, is remote okay? And they're like, no, they're hybrid. I was like, what do you mean by hybrid? You got to be in the office 3 days a week. I was like, no, thanks. Or the next one, which is, it requires, you to practice in this county, or it requires you to take DV cases. And long time ago, I decided that as I was focusing more on matrimonial and custody, it's impossible to, my perspective, I know that there are people who disagree with me. I think it's impossible to be at the ready to be a DV attorney with that quick turnaround time and also tend to the very high conflict divorce cases and also tend to the very highly emotionally charged divorce cases.
That's why I think, and I, again, could be controversial, but that's why I think the criminal defense attorneys handling the DV restraining orders makes more sense.
I agree with you 100%. I always disagreed with the jack of all trades, all trades, master of none.
That is a quasi-criminal hearing with quasi-criminal ramifications, and you need to have significant trial and evidence, knowledge and experience. And I think, you have to subpoena the police reports. You have to understand the police reports. I think the best attorneys, for the most part, I'm not saying there's always outliers one way or the other, that handle the DV restraining orders are criminal defense attorneys. And I'll tell you, I was in court the other day with, where there were two criminal defense attorneys and they were cross restraining orders. So, I had the plaintiff and then the defendant, and the other person had the defendant, who then filed in the plaintiff. And the judge said, we had court in the morning, and then in the afternoon, there was a swearing in of a new judge. So we saw all the judges, and he said to me, when I saw it was you and the other attorney, both criminal, he's like, I knew you two were going to work it out. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, what are we going to do? Like, have a slugfest between the two of us? I said, we both knew that. I was like, I didn't think you were going to grant either of them. I didn't want to waste, a full day of trial, Yeah. But I do think that, and by the way, my clients ask me to handle custody, divorce, alimony, and anytime they say any splitting up property, even if they're not married. And I say, and this is why I think criminal defense attorneys are also better about handling the restraining order. When they go down that road of custody or alimony, or I say, nope, not the right courtroom. Nope, we're dealing with the restraining order here. I might be able to argue for, if I have a defendant who hasn't seen his, and I said he, but
yeah, whatever gender,
they hadn't seen their children. Yes, I will argue for time, especially if it's dismissed, but I think it's really easy to say, nope, that is your divorce lawyer. That is and that is what they are. And so you're able to streamline them in ways that you can't if you're handling all of it, because people that are going through divorce like to vomit a lot of information out to you, even if you're like, we're just dealing with the restraining order right now. But 3 years ago, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, no.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is really important about having two different attorneys handling those two different things is because I obviously reached this conclusion after having tried to do them all. And what I saw was that when I was representing someone in the domestic violence matter, even if it resolved amicably through civil restraints, that other party saw me in the fierce, I'm gonna destroy you in DV court mode, where they almost took whatever hatred or anger it was leading into that situation and then reflected upon me. So even moving forward, I felt like it jeopardized the ability for us to try and amicably resolve the divorce, because that person already did not have trust for me. That person already felt like I was trying to stick it to them. And a lot of times I'm like, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work as well. They and their attorney need to see me as somebody who really wants to see you get divorced. And we're not going to continue to rehash the past. That is what it is. It's either, a DV order or it's a civil restraint. But once you're sitting next to the complainant in a DV matter, that other side pretty much hates your guts.
Right. And it's interesting. I didn't think it from that. I didn't think of it from that perspective. Or if your client doesn't think you advocated enough for them during the DV case, and the DV case is quick. So, so you were sorry. We went side, but
no, I love that segue is so important, because I think it is a huge misnomer. This one attorney can handle all of my things, and can I? Yes. Should I? Probably not. Right. Just the same way you could. Could you do an uncontested divorce or a settlement agreement? Absolutely. You're smart enough.
I jokingly said, my uncontested amicable divorce took about 4.5 years. So I'm not really the person to hire. But I think that in the same way that you enjoy being an expert in family law and doing what you do, and knowing how to resolve issues reasonably because you know what the law is and what is a reasonable ask versus an unreasonable ask. I really enjoy being an expert in criminal law. I'm a certified criminal trial attorney.
Right.
I feel like this is the lane that I'm in. And I don't want to be a jack of all trades.
Right.
I am, very clear of what my expertise is. And when I meet with clients, I say, if you called me about a divorce, I would refer you. I'm a certified criminal trial attorney. If you called me about a workman's comp claim, I'm referring you out.
Exactly.
I said, and so, I think it's hard to be an extremely effective lawyer and advocate if you're doing everything.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I will say there's outliers. I know a few people that do a little bit of everything and they do it really well, but that is not the norm. I think usually people that are doing a little bit of everything are doing a little bit of everything, not effectively at all.
Right. That was one big thing I saw during the pandemic, is that people who had not historically done family law, but perhaps maybe were doing civil or criminal or municipal, suddenly, when I believe the criminal courts and the municipal were very much impacted by the pandemic, whereas family law courts really just had a minor speed bump while they figured out how to get us all on Zoom. And I saw a lot of people dabbling at that time, and I was like, oh gosh, what they don't like, it's not as easy as you think it is.
No. And your clients you're dealing with people that are generally good people in the worst time of their lives, and that are making very reactive, responses and decisions.
Yeah.
So after
the job falling
after
in my lap.
your
Okay, it didn't really
headhunters,
fall in my lap. I've got these headhunters calling me, and they're presenting like really prestigious firms and like good starting salaries and benefits. And I was like, yeah, but if it's this billable, minimum, and they want me my butt in the seat 2 days a week just so they can feel good about paying their commercial lease, they're not a good fit for me. I don't see how that fits into my scheme of continued burnout recovery and those types of things, and improving my work-life balance. So I interviewed with NetSquire, and at the end, it was a great conversation. It didn't really feel like an interview, but more like an open conversation about like the practice of law and virtual and how I love practicing virtually. And at the end, I was like, I just said candidly, I don't think I'm who you're looking for. You need an associate who is going to take your cases and then like do all of those all in a North Jersey and Central Jersey courts. And, basically your overflow, the cases that, you don't have the capacity, you want an associate to hand those off to. I'm not going to be that person. I might be that person for like 1 or 2 months until my clients come calling, and then I'm going to be so busy, you're going to be back to interviewing all over again. Mm-hmm. So, respectfully, like, keep looking. I know that person's out there. I wouldn't want to waste your time when you desperately...
Did you say, but I can open the whole South Jersey branch for you so you cover all of New Jersey?
Fortunately, John and our conversation was, but I'm not done with you yet. Like, I think that we might be able to make something work. And so that spurred another conversation with both of the partners at that time, John and his partner. And he's now running NetSquire solo. So that the conversations felt less like interviews and more like conversations about and this is where the coach came in. Thank goodness for the coach. What did I want my reality to look like? Because I knew what I didn't want. And so we started with my list of don't wants. I don't want to be physically chained to an office. I don't want to have to move back from Florida. Mm-hmm. I don't want to don't want to use a Windows computer.
I don't either. That's the benefit of being the boss. I have a Mac and everyone else has Windows. Right?
But like, I haven't used a Windows-based computer since 2008. No, no, thank you. I picked up my husband's ThinkPad, or whatever, Lenovo one day. I could not even figure out how to maneuver it. No, I don't want. Just let me keep using my. So what don't I want? Came up with my don't want, minimum billable requirements, or I don't want where I'm the do it all. I do want support staff. I do want this. I want autonomy. I want to cover my southern counties. I want the ability to keep referrals in-house so that if somebody I'm representing moves to Essex County, we can keep them. We continue to help them.
Right.
And so when I reconciled my list of wants with what their wants were, there were a lot of similars. And I felt like they could take me as I was and let me do my thing, but with their supports and their systems and their wonderful, support staff. And I thought, let's give it a go. Let's give it a try. And, it's not one of these like fool me once or fool me twice. Like, I'm going to be pretty aware of whether I'm regressing in my burnout recovery or continuing forward with my burnout recovery. Because at that point, I still was working with my coach and she was available to me. So she was holding me accountable. Like, remember, you said this was important and this was going to be a part of your life moving forward, your stop time or not working on weekend. And so when I was transparent with what I wanted with my now boss, there weren't these like, he expects me to be available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. But I don't tell him that I'm not going to be available weekends. No, it was transparent. Like, I'm going to work Tuesday through Friday every week from 8 to 5.
Right.
He's like, okay, that works.
So you were very...
What will you do if you have Monday court though? And I was like, oh, I'll swap my day off for another day.
So you said, I'll work 4 days a week, full time. These are the hours. So you were very firm on that. Are you, do you book your calendar or does someone else?
As far as like
so with clients, so I want to know, how did you set up boundaries with your calendar? Did you set up?
Yes.
So these are the nuances. Like when they don't know even the first steps to take,
right.
Some of it is being really clear of your calendar, and I'm going to say, I had a conversation with Geraldine Lawrence on the podcast, and I said sometimes sometimes I feel like if I'm doing a really good job as a lawyer, not always doing the best job as a mom. If I'm doing a really good job as a mom, which I was quoting, I'm having a brain freeze right now. The joys of getting older. Shonda, can't think of her last name. It's a quote that she has said. And Geraldine said, no, I don't agree with that. And she said, it's about really booking your calendar. And I really took that to heart, where now there's a lot on my calendar that's personal stuff, but I also say to my staff, if you see I have a doctor's appointment, like you can't, if the doctor's appointment's at 12 o'clock, you can't book me for an 11:30 or an 11:45 call. Like, you have to give me a buffer. Like, I have a doctor's appointment, and I had to teach my staff that the calendar and creating that buffer zone. If you see I have a 2 o'clock court date, you can't have a 1:30 meeting with a client that I need to look at the file when I'm going to be in the car for those 30 minutes. Some conversations I can do in the car, but not a review of the discovery and the police reports. I actually need to be looking at them. So, So what did you put in place? What were the date, you were clear about the days, you were clear, no weekends, you were clear virtual. I'm going to be in Florida, but I will be working and handling. What were the things that you needed to implement personally for you to protect yourself from future burnout?
I am so glad you're asking that, because I really needed to be firm about my hours, because I was all over the place prior to that. So I decided I was doing an 8 a.m. start. The office doesn't open till 9. That's 1 full hour of complete silence where I can read my emails, prep for my day, whatever it is. Whenever I do have personal appointments, and now I do, I put those on the calendar and they stand. We don't move OBGYN appointments for a client meeting. Like, that's not happening anymore. Talk about breaking the bad habits. 5 p.m. is a firm stop time. Now, on a one-off, like somebody like, I literally am in a different time zone. Okay, but I pay myself back. This is what I learned from my coach. So let's just say I had somebody who was like in China. I would do a call at 7, but the next day I wasn't starting until 10. So it was a shorter day to accommodate the longer day. And as far as blocking things, having a really in-depth conversation with my paralegal about, if you see I am paneling MESP settlement panel on Wednesday, please know that that comes with, here's what it involves. And I think educating our support staff is so much more important, because all they know is I have an MESP that day. What does that mean? And what does it entail? And for me, it entails several hours of reviewing attorney memos in order to make a good recommendation the next day. So now, if you have an MESP on a Wednesday, block off 4 hours on a Tuesday or a Monday, or not Monday, because Monday's right, to review the memos.
Yeah.
And that's the time I'm going to review the memos. And if the memos come in after my review time, they don't get reviewed.
Yeah.
Because they were due by Friday. So if I don't have them by Tuesday morning, they're not getting read.
Yeah. The point of educating, and educating the support staff, I had to tell my staff when a case is a jury trial. I said, and the case is going. I have a lot of jury trials that are scheduled they're not the first case. My client's out of custody. It gets pushed back. But I had a trial. I don't remember now. I think it was in August. It was in August. It was like the first 2 weeks of August, a break. And then the last week, it was like a 3-week trial. And I'm looking at my July calendar, and I had to say to them, how do you expect me to prep for this trial? You don't give me any days. And they all looked at me, and I was like, if I have a trial a month before, you need to give me days, where they're blocked off trial prep days. And I do prep on the weekends. I don't have those strict boundaries, but I can't do all the prep. I can't meet with client all day and be in court all day and then have the mental
capacity.
Withstand to then prep a trial. I am, exhausted.
And not to say that trial prep on a weekend is completely prohibited. My coach needed to work with me on this, which is, okay, we say no weekends, but like occasionally you might need to. But it's not every weekend, and it's not every night that you're working till 9. It's a one-off. When it becomes every weekend, it becomes every night, that's when the boundaries have completely disintegrated. And don't beat myself up if there's a weekend where I'm spent prepping. It means I care and I'm trying to get done. And it may mean that I need to have another little sit down about what blocking for trial prep means. But, so I pay myself back. Trial's done. I take two days off to pay myself back for whatever it is. By the end of the trial, I'm going to need the 2 days off anyway.
Yeah. Yes.
But I've also letting it become a habitual thing where, I want my life to be like that. Trial prep and working and drafting things at 9 p.m. are the exception, not the rule. And my life prior to burnout was that was the rule and not the exception.
Right. Well, it sounds like prior to the burnout, you really were working 24/7 in the sense of even when you might not have been working and you were sleeping, your brain was still working. And so, as I said, it didn't turn off. So it sounds like you're very strict with your calendar. It sounds,
also little buzz, 4:45 p.m. It says wrap it up. It's my little reminder. And at 5 o'clock, it says close your laptop.
Nice. And when you close it, just for all those lawyers out there, you don't go on your phone to go keep checking emails and things like that, or you do? How?
I don't.
Which is good. Do you have your emails on your phone?
Yes, but not on the front screen. I have to deliberately swipe and then go into a second folder to find email. So that means that the little notifications with the number aren't showing up. My case management software, that's also in a hidden folder. So it's there if I'm in court or I'm traveling or, whatever, but it's not in my face so that if I'm answering text from my husband, I don't see, oh, now I have 82 missed
right.
emails.
But so that's the thing that sometimes people are like, they're done at 5. And I do this a lot. I will on a weekend say, I'm just going to go through emails, but there are just so many emails. I literally today, the last 2 days have been either in court. I was in court yesterday morning. There was a swearing in of a new judge yesterday that I was speaking at. So that was my whole afternoon. I was in court this morning, and this is my pause of the day. This is my break of the day. And I haven't looked at my emails really, but I went in and it was 536 emails now I will say some of them, one of the email accounts is like a Comcast account that just is, yes. And I will just go in and delete them. But I see the number and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's going to take me hours just to like go through the different email accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, something I do. And you're like, nope, I turn it off at 5, the computer.
Because I wanted to be clear about what my boundaries and times looks like. Because I understand that what I'm doing right now is different than the norm. In my welcome letter to every single client, I express what those times are, what those days are, that they are free to use the client messaging portal to communicate with me or even text message through my case. And I will respond on my next working day.
Yeah.
That their message is important to me and they can send it if they're up at 2:00 in the morning and can't sleep.
I say that too.
Wearing on them. I'll get to it and I'll see it and I will respond promptly when it's my next working hour.
So I say that to my clients. I think I might have said this when we talked before. I know I've said it on the podcast, is that I'm very clear with my clients that there should never be a communication issue, because I also have a digital managing system that they can text their questions to and that we respond to, and it goes into their digital file. So, and they can call, they can email. If they want to talk to me, they just have to call. Mm-hmm. And if they think about wanting to talk to me at 8:00 at night or 10:00 at night, they can text and say, I would like to set up an appointment with Melissa. Mm-hmm. And my staff will call them back the next day. And they will most likely get on the calendar that day or within 48 hours.
Right.
And if they just have a quick question,
I have a self-schedule link. You desperately want to talk to me tomorrow? Go ahead and pick your time. And the default in that scheduling app also is that there are buffers of time after each appointment. So part of the balance is like a default now, whereas before it would have been like back to back to back to back to back.
Right. No. I still have that. I haven't mastered that completely. My staff sometimes we didn't know what to do. And I'm like, and I'll say, you hate me. You all hate me right now. And I also say to them, you can call my office at any time. I have someone answering the phone 24/7.
Yes.
And if it's an emergency, I will call you back. Because they text me, my service texts me, and I will look at it. Only because sometimes I do have clients in the nature of what I do that are emergencies. But I also say, I'm going to tell you what an emergency is.
Yes. Define
it. An emergency is the police are at my door and I don't know what to do. That is an emergency. And I will respond to you. Calling me and like, I just got pulled over. They're walking to the car, and I will respond to you.
Right.
You know what's not an emergency? I want to talk about my case. When's my next court date? When's my new court date?
Right.
Which automatically gets generated to them. I will not respond anymore. It took me a long time to build up my practice enough to change the way I was doing things because, most criminal defense attorneys, this is what they do. It's all here. And I have set it up that it is all digital and I have a staff and I don't even give my cell phone out anymore.
Right.
Because of it, because I felt like my clients couldn't respect the boundaries.
Yeah. It's
yeah.
The idea that, we're supposed to be accessible all the time. And you're right, by nature of your area of law, like restraining orders do happen on the weekend. The judges in the family division are not available on weekends. So if somebody doesn't abide by a parenting time order or, take the child to basketball, there is nothing that's going to happen on a Saturday or Sunday with that regard. Unfortunately, he'll miss basketball and we can address it once we file a motion and we wait 24 days.
Right.
I can say in 15 years, the amount of absolute life or death emergencies that I've actually had to deal with, despite the fact that in my brain, I've always convinced myself that I need to be available 24/7. The number of life or death absolute emergencies in 15 years, is on one hand. And those have been child abductions.
Right. Right. Which then become criminal. They're really criminal.
Or really horrible abuse of a child, which then is a DIFUS thing and, gifts. But even those things can be remedied by you just hold the child and keep it from the other parent until we get, emergency order in front of the court. That's not going to happen on a Saturday or Sunday.
Right. So was there anything else you implemented that you wanted to share that would be helpful to people that, feel that they're struggling with burnout and they're listening and they might say, I know you said you did hire a life coach. You also had a therapist. Mm-hmm. You put in a lot of hard boundaries. Mm-hmm. You ended up knowing what you wanted in a job that would work for you as an attorney in the area of law that you wanted to continue practicing in. Is there anything else? You are now taking care of your physical health because you said we don't remove doctor's appointments.
The interesting thing was when I decided I wanted to remain a family law attorney, I said I don't want to be a family law attorney the way I've been practicing. I used to describe myself as I'm a high conflict divorce attorney. By nature of my own description of myself.
No.
That was stressful.
And even your original Instagram and, your Instagram handle, which I know is a tongue in cheek, but it's I Heart Divorce, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is,
and I still heart divorce because I love that people get a new, fresh beginning.
Right.
There's a lot of people who need it. And for that purpose, that fresh start and that freedom and that new, better life that lies ahead for them, even if they can't see it at that moment. I love that exists. Tens of years ago, it used to have to be, you had to prove fault and you had to point the finger and say, this person, was an adulterer or this person abused me or this person did this, that, and the other. And now we say, I've had irreconcilable differences for 6 months. I kind of just can't stand their face anymore. Get me divorced. Wow. So the fact that we don't further victimize or torment the spouse who wants to get out by putting this onerous burden on them is something that I think is important. And there's been, buzz about what happens if uncontested divorce goes away, which is, the rumors that were circulating about what may happen in 2025, but it would require so much constitutional adjustment.
I don't think that it would happen. A lot of the stuff that people are concerned about, I think it's legitimate concerns, but I also think it's not going to happen in New Jersey.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the reality. Unfortunately, it's going to happen in places where I think people need uncontested divorces. And so, but
so I kind of reached this point where I was like, okay, I am going to stay in family law, but I want to expand up. I'm not going to do DV cases. I want to expand upon my offerings, but in a way that feels good to me, which is how I got involved with the Amicable Divorce Network.
I was going to say,
And
you did a 180 because you really went from, I want to use your exact words, high conflict divorces. You did a whole 180 because you really don't want high conflict divorces anymore. So I cut you off.
Yep.
Because I think that the change is radical. So now instead of high contested divorces, your focus is
amicable and peaceful, well, hopefully peaceful, amicable, fair resolution of matters that are going to keep families out of courthouses and keep their funds and their time and their children protected from the horror that can be litigation. So I took the training, became a collaborative divorce attorney. I finished my mediator certification, so I've now been added to the court's roster of economic mediators, so I can help people who have not been able to successfully resolve their divorce matter, sit down with them, either them or their attorneys and them, and try to reach a resolution which will prevent that matter from proceeding to trial. And then additionally, I took parent coordination training, and which I think is such a valuable asset to our courts, because there are the same families that appear again and again and again on the same issues. And that paper, like order, is not holding any weight with one side or the other. Mm-hmm. And who's suffering the most are the children. Right. So a parent coordinator will get a matter resolved and addressed and a binding recommendation made far before that 24-day motion cycle. And realistically, hardly anything's heard in 24 days. It's way, way down the road. So families are going to get attention and resolution in a much quicker manner. And I'm so proud that it was me and Bonnie Punterman and Marla Marinucci who represent Vicinage One.
All great attorneys
across the state, and trying to serve our communities and serve our judges, who this frees up their docket to have cases that really need to be resolved by them, gets this off their schedule, so that perhaps maybe we don't burn those ladies and gentlemen out as well.
Right. I always wonder, so I come from like a very amicable divorce. My ex, and we have 4 children. My kids were a little older when we got divorced. We do Thanksgiving together. We have Passover together. And maybe there was like a very short period of time where it was contentious. And I just remember saying, like, we have these 4 amazing kids. We have the rest, even though they're going to be adults soon. We have their high school graduation. We have their college graduation. We have hopefully weddings and grandbabies. And like, are we going to make it miserable for them the rest of their life because we couldn't figure out how to make it work? Or are we going to like learn to be friends again and to be able to celebrate them? Because if we make it miserable, they're going to pick and choose who's going to come to what. And one of us is going to miss out on things. And it just like, I never understand why people can't get there. Like I understand there's a tragedy and it's sad. I think divorce is always a little sad. But I don't understand how people will say they would die for their kids. They would do anything for their kids. Well, this is that anything. So I think it's great that you and Bonnie and Marlena have stepped in and tried to have these resolutions with the court as well that are not contentious all the time. Let the judges handle the cases that are contentious.
Yeah, I mean, Vicinage One has the added burden of taking on Mercer County divorces now. And I've now been paneling as a panelist Atlantic, Cape May, and Mercer cases on top of them.
I thought we weren't paneling them. They decide, are we paneling the new ones? Is that? We're paneling them. Huh. Yeah. Well, the benefit of our judges being efficient and getting things done.
And
get more work.
that's part of the danger. It's like when you're good at your job, then they start throwing other people's jobs on you too. And I feel like that happened to our judges. So again, like to the extent I can help as a MES panelist try and settle things, an economic mediator, a regular mediator, and now as a parenting coordinator to be able to take that off their plates is going to make everything work a little bit smoother. Maybe we can get back to motions on 24 days.
So yeah, what is do we know the success rate? I'm just curious of those hearings and statuses.
I think we're still operating at about 98% of matters resolve, divorce matters resolve out of trial. And a good percentage of them do resolve on the matrimonial early settlement panel day. I think that there's a direct correlation between the level of preparedness of the attorneys and the litigants going into MESP to the quality of recommendation that we can provide and the likelihood of them walking out of there today with at least like a verbal agreement and a promise to come back in 2 weeks to put it through in front of the judge. So,
right. With the idea of if they're really prepared and if it was very thorough, they just have a higher chance of,
right. Because information is power. So, if we're always striving as panelists to also provide realistic, practical means of resolving things and trying to prevent people from incurring more charges. The longer the divorce goes, it's like an adverse impact. The longer it goes, the more unhappy you are.
Right. Because you're paying a lot of money for an attorney to get divorced. Right. And I always say, and again, this is, when attorneys are telling you to do things that allows them to bill more, but might not get you anything more in the divorce, I just, is it frustrating? This is a whole different conversation. It interests me.
When my clients listen to this or watch this, what they're going to hear is you saying the same things. Like I have conversations with them about what the financial impact of taking one path over another is. And I think it's really important to know, like, you might get this, not even guaranteed to get this result if you go down this path and it's going to cost you this, or you can maybe get something a little bit lesser, but you could be done.
You could be done and it'll be over. I remember that, I think this is when things were like eye-opening to my ex, was that the attorney he was using recommended that they do a forensic accounting of my law firm. Do you know how many months my law firm had been in business at that point?
I'm going to say like 6 months? 2 months. Brilliant.
And I said, he's spending your money, which is our money, because we'd been married 25 years. So everything was like together. I was like, what's he doing? I was like, there's nothing to account for.
I think 2 months into me having my own law firm, it would have been the value of my laptop inkjet printer.
So it'd have been 3 months. Like my business started in February, March, April. So it was like around April. And I was like, what are we doing? And it really, but people need to hear that like, what's the end goal? The end goal is to get divorced, right?
One thing I really like about where I'm at now and in working with John over at NetSquire is that we also offer like a consulting service, which means like, if you want to file your thing pro se, that's fine. You can do that. You don't have to like pay us $5,000 to file a motion, but I can guide you and provide you advice, or even, keep me on retainer. That way, if you feel like you're going to send a really nasty email to your ex, maybe you send it to me first. I review it and I tell you not to write it that way if you don't want a restraining order against you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people really appreciate the fact that like when they're navigating that post-divorce world where you've got deadlines to refinance the house or to get a quadro qualified domestic relations order done to divide up pensions, or you're newly implementing a parenting plan or transportation plan, that they can have somebody to go to and provide them like immediate practical advice on how to make this work. And it's been a real joy, like working with people and saying like, I'm not trying to like, buy my future vacation house with, your counsel fees. You can talk to me 1 time or 10 times or whatever else it is. and I'll be straight shooter. I'll take whatever you have in front of you, review it with you, explain it to you in regular people terms. And then you can make a decision. You want to hire me in the future and be your lawyer and battle it out in court? Great. You want to go to mediation? You want me to mediate? Great.
There you
But
go.
it's nice that I will discuss alternate dispute resolution alternatives, even, making settlement proposals or going to a mediation or hiring a parenting coordinator before litigating. Litigation is never my first move.
So do you think changing that mindset of high conflict to mediation and attempting to resolve amicably has also helped with you're dealing with your mental health and burnout as well?
Yes, I think it's helped. And it's also kind of brought me back closer to who I was when I first started practicing. I feel like that person was there. And then over time, I got more jaded and angry and then burnt out. But a lot of that had to do with the really high conflict, nasty, evil, hurtful stuff.
Yeah.
And
I think when people are working as attorneys and there's a nastiness or an angriness, I think that is a sign of burnout. When you're seem bitter or angry all the time with everyone, lawyers, clients, judges, I think that's a red flag.
And if somebody is listening to this right now and they're like, I do feel really edgy, I have been really snarky lately, or I this other attorney told me to tone it down, then maybe think about what are your feelings? Are you feeling burnt out? Do you feel like you need to take a little pause? Do you need to maybe resume therapy or start doing yoga or mindfulness or whatever? Do you really want people to cringe when they see your name at the top of a pleading and you're there now in the case?
Right.
Is that the type of person or practitioner you want to be?
Right.
And I hope that anybody listening, I hope that nobody cringes when they see my name at the top. I really hope.
Right. No, I mean, it's nice. There are times that, especially in DV cases, when I see other attorneys, and there are times I'm like, yes, I know it'll be resolved, and other times where I'm like, this is going to be a slugfest for nothing, So yeah, I also, so I'm going to finish up with a question for you. Well, I guess there's a few. What do you think when you say, if someone's listening and they're snarky or angry all the time? So I would think, thank you. I would think that maybe a pause isn't necessary, but maybe an evaluation, a really internal thought process of what's going on that I'm so angry. I can tell you that I know I went into therapy because I was so angry, not at work, but coming home and I had a sick mom and it just was so hard. And nobody told me that it would be so hard to be a caregiver to your mother, to have those roles reversed. And I remember when I went to therapy for the first time, I said, I'm just so angry and I don't know why. So what would you say in the sense of the legal world, if people are feeling burnout, if they're feeling like there's red flags, what suggestions? I always say you can call New Jersey LAP. That's one. They can also make referrals to you.
Oh yeah, for great advice starting right there with reach out to Lawyer Assistant Program and take advantage. I think it's 2 free therapy sessions that are available to attorneys.
3, but I think it's 3, but don't hold me to that.
The more the better. And look, if you meet with that first therapist and it's not a match, I mean, it's back to the way you were when you were dating. Find somebody else and check and see who's covered by your insurance. There are people out there. A lot of therapists will be via Zoom. People come up with all these objections in their head about why therapy won't work or why it will be too difficult to fit into their schedule. And, but it really can fit if you calendar. And then think about and examine what your feelings are tied to. For me, a lot of the anger was resentment. And my coach gave me a resentment journal instead of a gratitude journal. And she asked me to look at my resentments because that's where my boundaries are being crossed. And so maybe if you're not feeling very grateful or you don't have too much gratitude, write down your list of resentments, analyze where those are coming from.
And also why. I mean, as simple as, sometimes I think, yeah, why the resentment? Is it because you're envious that someone else is able to relax, or jealous, or, you're mad that you're exhausted because you're not putting the boundaries in? What's the resentment coming from?
So I definitely think that's a great starting place with therapy and the journaling, and, just even your first step at like acknowledging that you just don't feel great. Like the way things are happening right now, the way that you feel when you wake up, like the thought of going to the office, if that's weighing on you, notice that, take notice of it, and then analyze where's that coming from. Those feelings of dread, they start somewhere, and they're not permanent, which it feels like they're permanent at the time that you're in your lowest. But we do have resources within our legal community. We have other attorney colleagues you might reach out to in confidence and ask for their support as well. I'm very proud that I've been able to offer support to some attorneys and vice versa. And, let them know, like, okay, listen to this podcast, or maybe this is a good book, or maybe this is a therapist you might want to speak with. Like, we should be kinder to each other.
We should be kinder.
We should be. I think we made a huge mistake in 2012. I think we tried to treat it like nothing big was happening, but a lot of big was happening. And now 5 years later, we're really starting to see the impact on professionals.
Right. Well, I think we see the impact on lots of people, whether it's professionals, the kids that also had to go through it and lost a lot of developmental socialization, communication.
I'm glad that we're having chatting. You and I are chatting. I saw there's another talk coming up with David Burnout. He's going to be talking about burnout and resiliency, and the conversations are good. And I'm glad that they're happening, but it's the actions that come next that are crucial to really banishing this and moving forward in a healthy way.
I think lawyers need to feel safe that they can say that they're struggling, whether it's burnout or any general mental health issues like depression, anxiety, panic disorders, without fear of losing their livelihood, having an ethics complaint, I think that there's a few different reasons why people don't acknowledge it. And sometimes it's denial, but I think sometimes people know and they're hiding it because they're just so scared of what the implications professionally will mean. And when you're the breadwinner in your family, or when your income is such a necessity, which is why people, and if you say it, and then somebody says, you haven't been communicating with me, that's an ethics violation, and I think that there's so much fear around it.
Yes.
I've also said, the difference between, there's fear. I think people of my age and even a little younger are scared to say it because I think that we're not as comfortable acknowledging mental health issues. I think we're getting better at it, and I think we're learning from it. Our kids, I have said, my kids in college are very handed. They say they and their friends talk about what if any diagnosis they have, the medicine they're on, what medicine worked for them, if they were on medicine that didn't work for them, and there's no negative correlation for them about the diagnosis or the medicine, where I think there still is for us. And I think for lawyers generally who are a lot of type A, a lot of overachieving people, a lot of people that see themselves one way, and we might be all of those things, but we're still human. So,
it's like we're afraid of showing any sign of weakness ever, but being open and being honest and, being a little bit vulnerable and saying like, I struggled with this, or, I felt really, really low at this time. I really just hope that it helps other people know that, there are supports out there, and that even if it's like that dark day, that doesn't have to be your darkest, and it doesn't have to be that way that it continues in your life, and you can kind of switch it and turn it around. It's possible. It's work. It doesn't magically fix itself, but it's fixable.
Right. And a lot of the fears about their career, the way judges think or might perceive it, these are the negative thoughts in our head, because you said it. You said how supportive the court and the judges were, that it did not in any way hurt your career, and that they gave you the grace and the time that you needed to be able to come back and, I'm going to say, be a better advocate and be a better full attorney for someone.
Last time we had talked a little bit about that's easier to do when you're part of an organization where there's other attorneys. But I'm hopeful that the bar, we can be active in encouraging some sort of assistance program that would allow people to take the time that they need to get the help that they need without, just leaving their clients in the lurch or punishing somebody in any way. You shouldn't have to close your law firm doors if you need to take care of yourself.
Right. And I think as I said, the concern is that such a large percentage of attorneys in New Jersey are solo practitioners. I really think the idea that you said of like attorneys being willing to say that they would step in for an attorney in this area of law to cover court dates, not trials, but kind of work as someone who will cover for no service, almost as someone who could get, while we still have Madden credits requirement, pro bono work, helping out other lawyers.
Hold the line. Make sure there's
no
major things.
But that's
happening.
The pushback from my understanding is the pushback is that concern that clients' needs will not be met during that time of a pause. And so it's not, and that is a concern, but we can't lose attorneys and we can't lose people because of mental health issues that their job isn't worth it. Their job isn't worth their life. And we've lost somebody in the last year and a half because of mental health. So
it's sad, and and then you find out after the fact, and you say, I didn't even know that person was struggling.
Right. And you said when you were struggling, nobody looked at you and said,
gosh, her dark circles under our eyes are enormous.
Right. And you were saying that. I was like, nobody wants to say that. But I don't know. I have seen people and I've looked at them and I've said, are you okay?
Yeah.
Not how are you? How are you is different than are you okay? Because are you okay is saying, I can see something's there, Yeah. So, as I say to my kids, for good mental health, drink your water, go out in the sun, get your sleep, make sure you eat things that I have to remind all my kids, all of these things, and take a walk, because it really does make you feel better, whether you like it or not. So, yeah. Anything else before we, I do want to thank you so much. I could talk to you obviously for another hour, but anything else you think? I mean, I think it is really important for people to know that if they're struggling, you can reach out. You can reach out to me. I know you can reach out to Kristin. And I know that even if I know that I'm not going to have the answers, but I'm going to be able to listen. And I'm also going to be able to connect you with people that are going to be able to help.
Exactly. And with confidence and, privacy.
And privacy. Yes.
We won't have the next episode about, who called us.
No. But
just
you
know that we're
do know,
helping them as a resource.
yes, and you do know that if you, as an attorney, and I think I've said this previously, as an attorney, if you know someone's struggling, you can call New Jersey LAP and make a referral, and they will reach out to that attorney, and that can be anonymous as well. So I think it's really important for us to know that as well. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Melissa. This has been really a great opportunity to share, and I thank you. Yeah.
I appreciate it. You have a happy 2025, and may all your goals and boundaries be respected and accomplished.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
One of the best ways to support Melissa and the Mighty MERP Podcast is to go to our YouTube page, find the subscribe button, and once you've hit subscribe, open the menu and click the bell icon so you actually get alerts when we post new episodes or shorts. For any questions or interest in podcasting, go to legalpodcasting.com.